Hey, my name is Miles, and this is my video editing basics part 2, where we're going to do a little bit more advanced stuff to make your video extra awesome. So yeah, if you haven't seen the first part of it, you might want to go through that. We're going to use the same project as before just to keep it simple. And you should know how to import your clips and move them around and trim them a little bit. So we're going to assume that you know that kind of stuff moving forward. So if you haven't seen that, go back to the last one, check it out, or slow this video down and you might be able to piece together some of the buttons and stuff for that. But yeah, so we're going to show you a couple cool things that you can do here, such as adding music and color grading and some effects. So without further ado, let's show you some of those things, okay? So the first one we're going to do is music. So I just have this website pulled up here called Ben Sound. They have free music tracks that you can use in their video, and they're a little simple and templatey, right? This is a free Creative Commons. You have to give attribution, but we're just doing a demonstration here, so this will work for our purposes. You have to check out what the music license is for the music that you are licensing, because otherwise it can get claimed or taken down. If you pay for music, then you shouldn't have that problem, unless you don't read the rules of where you're allowed to use it. But anyways, okay, so we downloaded our music track there. And I'm going to go back to our original project folder, which I've named demo now, the root folder. And this is our file folders here. And so what I would do is right now I have the Ben's Sound Jazzy French. That was the song we got. I'm going to cut this and I'm going to bring it back to our assets and I'm going to place it here. Paste. That's our music, right? You can rename it if you want, but up to you. Okay, so now that we have our music in our file folder, we need to import it into our project. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go back to our project folder here. And these are all our video files from the previous tutorial. If I click on them, it'll pull up the clips. We're going to organize our project here a little bit, okay? So the first thing I will do is right-click on this gray space. You can also click on this little folder, and we're going to create what's called a new bin. Now, a bin is just a box that you can put whatever files are in your project into to organize them. So we can make one that's called music. We can make a new bin called video files. And I'm going to take all my clips and I'm going to put them into the video files. And these two clips as well. Just holding shift to select those, click and drag. And now I'm going to make one more that's called sequences. So if you remember, the sequence is our timeline here, our table that we're editing on. So I'll bring that into there, and now we're nice and organized. Great. Okay, so now what we want to do is import our music. Well, if I'm using this view, and you can use the icon view as well, if I click on music, thanks for saving. If I click on music or double click on it, it'll actually open this up in a second tab here. So that's the way that Premiere works, is it tries to keep you working on one tab at a time. So if I went back here and double clicked on sequences, that would get its own tab as well. And you can run out of real estate pretty quickly here because it'll keep moving them over and over and over, and the next thing you know, you're into this little extra section here. So if you right click on them and go close panel, you can always close one if you want. You can also click and drag on their name and you can move them somewhere else, or you can actually go undock and it'll create a floating window if you want to move it somewhere else, or say you have a second monitor. But for now, we're just going to leave that in here. Another way to do this is, if you don't want to go through all these bins, is you just use the arrows and you can see what's inside the folders. Okay, so to import our music, let's close this for now. Go back here, let's double click on the gray space and let's find our music. And it's going to be on our desktop, in demo, in assets, and our song. Great. That's loaded in. We will drag that to our music folder, and now we have our track. So adding music is basically the same as adding video files, except it will only have one track. See, it's how it's green. Audio only files are typically green. And if you drag it in here, it will create the audio file. So now if I was to hit play, you should be able to hear the song that we're playing right now.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
and I fixed the audio so you can hear my dialogue as well. So yeah, that's the basics of adding an audio file. Now there's a lot of different things you can do here. I just click and drag on these little gray areas to the left here, and I can create a larger timeline if I want to see what my clip icons are or the waveforms. And you can do stuff like that where you zoom in and out on your file and say you wanted to cut your clip on this audio waveform here. Well, I can trim that. So I pressed C for my razor blade, V to select, delete, and now it'll start from there. So that's nice, but what if it's a little harsh coming in for the music? What if we want it to fade in? Well, we can add effects and transitions to make it a little cleaner. So let's undo what we did here. So it's a full clip. And then let's go to the beginning of the track here because we don't have any audio coming in. And let's add a nice fade to our intro video as well. So there's a couple ways you can do this. The most default of fade is a black fade. If you hover over where the red side of the clip is here and you right click on it, you can apply a default transition. And that's just going to give you a basic dissolve. So our video faded in there, and you can do the same thing with the audio. You can apply a default transition, and now the audio's faded in. Great. You can play with these by left clicking on that little red section and dragging, so I can make the dissolve longer or shorter if I wanted it to be quicker or slower. And I can also do that between clips. I can add a default transition, so now it's going to go black to normal, then fade between the clips. So I guess that's the default transition between the two clips. But it makes things look a little bit nicer instead of that hard cut between the two clips, so we could add that there as well.
Oh, there you go. Oh, beautiful.
Now, if you were very astute in noticing what happened when I added the dissolve here, it also applied it to the audio tracks. So if there's an audio track, you see how this blue clip is... this video clip is blue. This top one is the video and the bottom one is the audio. So they're both blue, which means they're connected to the same clip. And when you clicked on them, they both kind of light up. You can separate those tracks if you want. But for now, all I'm telling you is that when you apply a dissolve, it will apply to both the video and the audio.
Oh, beauty.
It was a beauty indeed. Okay. So what else can we do here? If you don't like these transitions, if you go to the left here to the Effects tab, and it should be somewhere on this bottom left window. If not, you can always go to Window and then Effects, and you should be able to find it. There's a whole bunch of other transitions that are baked into Premiere that you can use. So if you just arrow down on the Video Transitions tab here, you can add some fun ones like irises. So we could do an iris cross. So all I'm doing is clicking and dragging this, and if I drag it to the left of the clip, it will only do it before the clip. If I drag it between the two clips, it will transition between the two clips. So ooh, that's fun. Whoa! Right, and if I drag that over, that will look different because you're changing the timing of when it's playing the actual transition. There's a whole bunch of them here. The most common ones you'll probably use are fade to white, fade to black, and maybe dissolve. You can also search for them in this little search bar here. So if I search fade, if I can spell right, fade white. Nope. Should be somewhere in here. Let's see. Video transitions. Nope. Maybe it's called dissolve. Yeah, dip to white. That's it. So dip to white and dip to black will be your most common, so we can apply those to show you what they look like. So dip to black goes to black, and dip to white will go to white. Right, so you can change up your edit with those two as well. You can click and drag these to change the transitions, but what I often do, and this isn't so much for transitions between the clips, but more when they're on the beginning of one clip, is you can actually double click on it and it'll show you the actual transition duration time, and you can change this to however long you want it to be. So right now it's a minute or a second and 3 milliseconds or frames or whatever it is, and I can change this to 4 seconds, and see, it made it go really long as far as it could go. It couldn't actually go to 4 seconds. It only went to 2, but it'll play the entire clip there. So you have some options on how long your transitions can be between the two of them. So yeah, so we learned about adding audio tracks, we learned about making transitions, and now let's learn about color grading. So you can actually make your footage look nicer by adding some color effects as well. If I go into the search bar here, and you can go under Lumetri presets, but there is a lot of presets that you'll have to sort through. If you like the presets, you can click on them or click on the picture here and drag them to the clip, and that will apply it. But we're going to do this the way that I normally do this, which is to search Lumetri, and then color. So Lumetri color is the one that you're looking for, and I think you can do custom presets if you wanted to save it in a little folder here on your own. But if you click and drag that, you can apply this to any clip, and what you're allowed to do then is to apply a color grade. So any of the effects that you use in Premiere that are actual effects that you apply to a video or audio track, you can change the parameters in this effects control setting in the top left up here. So if I get rid of my source window and I click on the effects control, these are all the effects that I can play with on this clip right now. So I'll just close those to make it look a little cleaner to start with. So we can do simple things, like if we click on the motion, this is the motion effects for the clip. I can left click on this number and drag left and right, and I can change the scale of the clip. So if I wanted to zoom in, I can do that, and I can use these two ones in position to adjust where the framing is. So say I wanted it to frame it closer to the hole there, I can do that, right? Now if I did that and I say, I don't like that, I can always click on these little reset icons on the right here, and it'll take me back to the default. So you can always undo whatever you've done before. That's usually easier than redoing when you're doing a bunch of advanced things. The other ones you can play with is opacity. So if you want to layer two clips together or fade them over each other, you can ghost them out like that. Better example is if I drag this clip over top another one, all you'll see is the top clip. But if I use the opacity and set this to 50%, which you can type in these numbers too as well if you click on them, it'll be 50%. So now I can see both clips between the two.
Oh, there you go.
Right? And for some reason it keyframed it, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh,
There
there
we
you
go.
go. Oh, beautiful.
Okay, so let's undo those. So let's work on our color grade here. So I believe it was this clip. Right, okay. So go to Lumetri color, and if you drag that or open the little box there, click on the arrow, you can see that we have a whole bunch of effects here. I'm just going to show you some very basic ones because there's a lot to play with, and maybe we'll do a more advanced tutorial in the future. But you can use this in a number of ways. The basic correction is mostly about getting exposure right? If your clip was too bright or too dark, or you're trying to recover it because it was set on auto and it doesn't look very good, you can do the same thing with these. So you can left click and slide left and right, and it'll let you adjust the brightness and darkness on this exposure tab. So exposure is just how much light is exposed into the camera and makes your clip brighter and darker. And right, if I screwed that up and said I was at 6 and ooh, that's too bright, I can always hit reset here and go back to normal. I'll give you a word of caution when using these. They're pretty aggressive off the bat, so even if you do one exposure, that's a fair amount of brightness. I usually ended up playing with like 0.3, something lighter than that, so you don't have to be very heavy-handed with it. If you click on the arrow here as well, you can also drag this slider to be a little bit more precise if you want to see it. It's up to you on how you want to adjust it, and it depends on how your clips look. This clip is actually pretty balanced right now, so there's not a lot that you need to do to it, but maybe there's little things we can do, right? Like we can take some of the highlights down so that we can see the sky a little bit better. So if I go maxed, see it brightens the highlights, the white bits in the sky. If I come down, it'll reduce them, but it also flattens the image out, so I'd probably take it down just a little bit. Same thing with the shadows. You can lower the shadows to make these trees darker in the background because we are taking out, we're basically making the shadows darker. I can also lighten the whole image up if I wanted to, but just be careful with these so you don't overdo it. The good rule of thumb to follow is less is more, so take a little bit down on that. You can do the same thing with the whites and the blacks. So I'd go a little bit lower on the blacks and maybe a little bit brighter on the whites. And saturation, you have to be gentle with this one because you can very quickly oversaturate and overpunch your image. So I might just give it a little tiny punch just to give those trees a little something, maybe around there. Seems pretty good. And maybe a little bit of contrast too, just to give it a little darkness. So we played around with our image a little bit, and you're probably wondering, well, I forget what it looked like at the beginning. How do I check that out? That is super easy. If you go beside Lumetri Color and you click on FX, it will turn off the effect. And if you see it's got a little line through it, if I click on it again, it will turn it back on. So it might be hard to see because I made subtle adjustments, so I'm going to make the exposure much higher. Let's go 3. Is that changing? No. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's because I have it turned off right now. So if I turn it on, whoa, super bright, right? If I turn it off, the original clip. So I can bring that back to 0, and we can turn this on, and we have our nice little color grade. Those are the basic corrections. You can go into the creative, and you can do all sorts of things like color adjustments, if you want to change your shadows, if you wanted to give it a certain tone, because, you know, this is an outdoors golf course, so maybe we want to add a little bit more green punch, kind of yellowy green, so it's not, if it's green, people will look sickly, but if it's kind of like yellowy green, it'll look punchier, just in the shadows. You can also do curves if you know how to use those, and there's a whole bunch of things in here that you can use to adjust clips. And the other nice thing that you can do with these is if you're trying to match clips from different cameras, or create a certain look, you can individually color grade each clip to make sure that they look good and match each other. Now, speaking of that, you don't want to have to color grade all of these clips. So there's a couple things that you can do to apply this color grade to all of your clips. You can, one, right click on that Lumetri color and copy it, and if I go to a different clip and I click on the clip, see, and I press Control V, I will apply it to this clip. Now it's going to apply the same settings as I had on here. So if this was a very bright shot and I took the brightness down and this clip is not very bright, you're going to have to adjust those. So I can see this is kind of faded in the sky here. So what I would do is I'm probably going to brighten this up a little bit. Right, it looks a little faded. So, maybe some of the shadows were a little darker and the highlights could go, yeah, that seems about good. Right, and now if I play these, they look like they match better. So that's what you can do with color grading. Now, again, that's the tricky way to apply it. So I'd go to this clip and I'd hit Control V and apply it, and I'd go to this clip and I'd apply it. There's another way to do this that I think is 100 times easier, and you use what's called adjustment layers. So I would make another bin here that's called adjustment layers, and I would right click on this dark space here, go to new item, and go to adjustment layer. And it's going to ask you, what size do you want this adjustment layer to be? Well, this is our sequence settings right now, so unless we wanted to change it for some reason, it should be fine as is, and you can always right click on it after and change it. So we've created a new adjustment layer, and you're probably wondering, what the heck is an adjustment layer? An adjustment layer is just a blank layer that you can apply whatever you want to, and by using it, you can apply one effect or a bunch of effects to multiple clips. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go back into my other clips here. I'm going to delete the color grade. I'm going to go back to this clip. I'm going to copy the color grade because I'm going to save it for this example, and then I'm going to delete it. So right now, all of our clips have no color grade. If I go to the adjustment layer and I press Control V and I apply that color grade that we used from before, now every clip that we have gets the same color grade. Right? So this is the easiest way to create a consistent look between all your all your clips. Now I'm noticing that there's a couple clips, like this clip looks a little too green and this clip looks a little different than this clip. Now you can go into those clips and individually adjust them, but overall you've kept a consistent look. And this is also what I do if I want to look very quickly at what the whole project would look like color graded. So if you shoot your footage in a log profile or a flat profile, or you just want to see what it would look like if you played with some effects, this is what it naturally looks like. You can throw an adjustment layer on, make a couple quick grades. So let's just make this kind of extreme. Say we wanted to make it really red, and see, hey, what does that look like on all of our clips? And now I can turn this on and they're all red. And we can say, I like that. It's very post-apocalyptic. So this little eyeball button here, that's what I was using to turn the adjustment layer on and off. If you click it, it will disable the track. I can do the same thing with the video clips disabled. Now I just have a black empty sequence. If I click them on, they will go back on. You can do the same thing with audio. You can mute them. So if I didn't want to hear my audio while I was listening to the editing, right, that's this audio from the video clips here. I can click mute, and when I play it, I won't hear me say good job. If I unclick it and go back,
Oh, there you go. Oh, beauty.
I said beauty. Don't you love listening to yourself on video? And then the other one you can do here is solo. So this S is solo tracks. So if I say I have several tracks, audio tracks lined up, and I only want to listen to one of them at a time, I click that, and this is the only one that will play. So rather than having to mute and unmute all of these things, I only have to deal with this one, which is pretty easy. Yeah, so that's a couple things that hopefully help you out with some advanced editing. And like I said before, if you have any questions or if that's confusing, I don't know why I'm shrinking the window, let me know, and I'll try and make another tutorial explaining some of those things. And yeah, I'll see you in the future.